Hello, Star Wars fans, and happy 2023. This is John of Video Games and the World, and we're going to talk about is the Star Wars prequels. But before we begin, make sure to check out my video essay of The Last Jedi after this one. And I just made a new sub-channel that will be 100% gaming. It will have uploads of playthroughs and also live streams as well. Both links are in the description. Okay? Now, the Star Wars prequels were released over 20 years ago. There were people who loathed the prequels, but there were many who did indeed like the prequels. But what was most unfortunate of the Star Wars prequels was that it birthed toxicity in the Star Wars fandom, sending threats to actors, bullying them, etc. And the sad thing is that this toxicity has gotten worse during the sequel trilogy, especially after The Last Jedi, and that is sad how it's still continuing. But enough of that, okay? So, it turns out that after 20 long years of negativity, people seem to love the Star Wars prequels. There were stories that were connected to the prequels that turned out to be successful, such as The Clone Wars, Rebels, Tales of the Jedi, and various books as well. Most would defend the prequels by saying that it was aimed mostly at a much younger audience. Judging by some kid-friendly and campy moments, it was in some ways. Many criticized the prequels for not having well-executed storylines, and many expressed absolute hatred for one of its characters, Jar Jar Binks. Many say that this character was absolutely annoying and irritating that he killed the franchise. Nowadays, the kids of the 1990s and 2000s have seemed to grown up and see him as a goofy, lovable clown with a good nature. While adults at the time laughed at the subpar lines, kids laughed at much whatever Jar Jar said and did. There were people who actually grew up with the original trilogy who loathed the prequels, but at least there were adults that grew up with the original trilogy that did indeed love the prequels. When adults first returned to a galaxy far, far away back in 1999, they expected to relive the same magic the original trilogy had brought them as children. Their disappointment is what fueled most of the criticism directed at the prequels, similar to how the prequel children criticized the sequels. The lesson is that you shouldn't expect something to live up to your expectations. Yes, sometimes it may feel like the originals, but there will be new stuff included that may not feel like it. These new things can be either good or bad depending on how they are executed. Now, I saw the Star Wars original trilogy thanks to my cousins and my older brother who grew up with the original trilogy. I saw The Phantom Menace in the movie theater when I was 13 years old, so you could say that I'm a child of the prequels. The story in a way could have been a bit better, but at least I enjoyed watching the Bunta race, the space battle of Naboo, and my most favorite was the fight between Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan against Darth Maul. I really liked Darth Maul's double-bladed lightsaber. It was so cool. By the way, despite The Rise of Skywalker being a hated movie, I think Dark Rey's lightsaber was kind of a nice nod to Darth Maul's lightsaber. The choreography in that fight scene was pretty neat. What I also liked about The Phantom Menace is that the Gungans and humans of Naboo decided to set aside their differences and unite to fight against the Trade Federation occupying their home world. Which means, when you and some other group of people have a common foe seeking to oppress and control you, you have to work together to beat that enemy. Attack of the Clones was not even well received as well by fans. They hated it mostly because of the acting, mainly Hayden Christensen, who played as Anakin. I will admit that at first I wasn't too fond of his acting skills, but he has improved in Revenge of the Sith. Attack of the Clones is a much more darker story than The Phantom Menace, as we see Anakin being a Padawan of Kenobi. He has trained as Kenobi's Padawan for 10 long years. However, this chapter of the prequels shows the beginning of his downfall as he struggles mentally and emotionally between his feelings for Padme Amidala and his dedication to the Jedi Order. And we also get to see a much darker side of him in a very tragic moment. I thought the story was more or less better than The Phantom Menace, and in some way it could have been better as well. But I did indeed love that fight against Count Dooku, especially when Yoda came to fight him. It was so badass! Woo! After Attack of the Clones, I remember watching the Clone Wars cartoon of 2003. and I totally loved it as we were introduced to new heroes and villains. That fight between Anakin and Asajj Ventress on the fourth moon of Yavin was phenomenal, and the intro of General Grievous was freaking epic! I remember how huge and intimidating he really was. Wow. The Clone Wars had a CGI cartoon in 2008 which was kickstarted by that animated movie. It introduced brand new heroes such as Ahsoka Tano, who became a fan favorite in the show. It started out slow, but with each episode it got better and better, and it turned out to be one of the most beloved Star Wars animated shows ever. And hey, Rebels, I love it. Rebels is awesome. Revenge of the Sith is considered to be the best of the prequels, as we see Anakin become the iconic villain that made so many afraid, Darth Vader. We see how Palpatine manipulates Anakin to the dark side of the Force. This was also the birth of the tyrannical Galactic Empire, but I hated how Grievous in this movie was reduced to not so fearsome. Because when he was first introduced in the 2008 cartoon, in the 2003 cartoon as well, he would inspire fear not only in his troops but in his enemies as well. That yelping dragon that Obi-Wan was riding in Utapau, I thought it was kind of annoying in a way, but I felt bad for it when the clone troopers betrayed Obi-Wan. The montage sequence when Order 66 was executed, that was totally sad. Yoda could sense his fellow Jedi dying, but thankfully Chewbacca and Tarful help him escape. Not to mention that montage when Palpatine turned the Republic into the Galactic Empire while Anakin was killing the Separatists. It was pretty phenomenal and a great nod to The Godfather. When Michael Corleone was baptizing his nephew and his enemies were being slaughtered. The final battles in the movie were phenomenal. It was very well choreographed, epic, yet very tragic at the same time, because Anakin fell into darkness, the Republic became the fascistic and militaristic Galactic Empire, but despite all the tragedy and sadness, there is still hope for the future. So, the prequels are not only filled with the Clone Wars and Tales of the Jedi, but the story of the prequels continues with Rebels, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the Bad Batch, which are great shows, to be honest with y'all. Let's not also forget that the prequels had spawned internet memes that are comprised of movie lines of the prequels that a lot of the kids who grew up with this trilogy laughed at, such as Obi-Wan saying, "Hello there." That was kind of funny indeed. In my honest opinion, the prequels indeed have various flaws that I didn't like, but at least it has its awesome yet epic moments. The prequel trilogy is not perfect, neither the sequel trilogy, and yes, the original trilogy has its meh moments. Nothing and nobody is perfect. It's the way of the world. And when I said about the trilogy having meh moments, boy, there's going to be a lot of backlash. What are you going to do? Now, the people who nearly caused Ahmed Best to take his life, bullied Jake Lloyd, and sent death threats to Hayden Christensen for his acting are nothing more than a bunch of lifeless jerks who need to get a life. It's okay to criticize a movie for its story, acting, visuals, and other things, but it's never okay to submit to such low level of hate, deplorable, and idiotic attitude to bully and send death threats. People who do this kind of stuff are cowardly bullies driven by their fragile egos. To be honest, I did indeed like the prequels, including the stories that filled them. But hey, if you remember the pre-Disney era, there were stories during and even after the prequels that were really good, such as The Force Unleashed 1 and 2, and various Legends novels and comics as well. And I loved Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, the Clone Wars game for the GameCube, classic Xbox, and PlayStation 2. And no, it's not from the Clone Wars cartoon, it's an original story. And boy, do I really wish that this game was remastered. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen. Such a pity. I also remember when I made a Revenge of the Sith playthrough that you're seeing in this news video, which came out on the Game Boy Advance and PS2 and classic Xbox and GameCube, that I spoke about Anakin's downfall and also about how in the Jedi, attachment is forbidden, for it can lead to jealousy and take one step closer to the dark side of the Force. So, do you think that the prequels are better than you remember or not? If so, leave your comments and explain. So remember, comment, like, subscribe, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. This is John of Video Games and the World. May the Force be with you. Later.